Good morning. This is the sermon I'm recording for September 20th, 2020. I'm Pastor Patricia Hughes. We've got a whole worship service that we're putting up from Lutherans Restoring Creation that I'm really proud of. It's lovely. But I had something to say about this text, so I decided to give it a go on the sermon. I wanted to read the reading for you today out of the Message, which is a paraphrased Bible. Just wanted you to know it's a great Bible resource, but it's not word for word. Here we go. God's kingdom is like an estate manager who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. They agreed on the wage of $1 a day and went to work. Later, about 9 o'clock, the manager saw some other men hanging around the town square, unemployed. He told them to go to work in his vineyard and he would pay them a fair wage. They went. He did the same thing at noon, and again at 3 o'clock. And at 5 o'clock, he went and found still others standing around. He said, "Why are you standing around all day doing nothing?" They said, "Because no one hired us." He told them to go to work in his vineyard. When the day's work was over, the owner of the vineyard instructed his foreman, "Call the workers in and pay them their wages. Start with the last hired, and then go on to the first." Those hired at 5 o'clock came up and were each given $1. When those who were hired first saw that, they assumed they would get far more. But they got the same, each of them $1. Taking the $1, they groused angrily to the manager. "These last workers put in only one easy hour, and you just made them equal to us who slaved all day under a scorching sun." He replied to the one speaking for the rest, "Friend, I haven't been unfair. We agreed on the wage of $1, didn't we? So take it and go. I decided to give to the one who came last, same as you. Can't I do what I want with my own money? Are you going to get stingy because I'm generous?" Here it is again, the great reversal. Many of the first ending up last, and the last first. So I'm going to ask you today, what are you worth? There's a lot of possible answers to this question. I have a degree in accounting, you lucky people, so my mind automatically goes to adding up investments and savings, etc., and subtracting debt. That's your worth, right? Or maybe I'm wrong. I remember a conversation that's been going on my whole life where someone would say, the minerals in your body could be mined and sold, and then the worth of your body would be, and by the way, here in 2020, I looked it up, it's just under $600 in today's market. So there's that. Or we could look at the dollars per hour your expertise is worth. And depending on how you figure it, a nurse is currently worth about $1,900 a week. And of course, an English major is worth a lot less. That's a joke. But you see where I'm going with this. If we're talking about what we're worth, money and salaries come up right away. But what about my friends who are retired? Are they worth what Social Security gives them? Can you see that I think this interest in how much money we're worth is pretty ridiculous? It's meaningless, in fact. In these days of COVID-19 pandemic, many people's jobs have disappeared or simply cannot be accomplished while maintaining social distance and staying safe. Has this changed our worth? I'm afraid many of us feel that it may have. I know I feel that. On the list of things I think it's important that I do as a pastor, visiting is really high. But I can't visit right now. It's dangerous. I had just begun to find a way to patio visit with people when we were able to distance on their patio, and then we had Oregon fires, and the air quality has been so horrific the last few days. That's out. So what on earth am I worth in this day and time? Do you think about this? Jesus thinks about it. Oh, even clearer, Peter thinks about it. The last 4 verses in Matthew 19 have Peter saying, "Look, we have left everything and followed you. What then will we have?" Jesus talks a little bit, but then he finally says, "But many who are first will be last, and the last will be first." And in Matthew 20, he tells the parable of the generous vineyard owner who pays people the same wage, whether they work 8 hours or 1. And that parable ends, So the last will be first, and the first will be last. So you might be justified if you think that's what Jesus wants us to take away from this parable. But the brilliant theologian Karl Barth said, always preach the gospel with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. Don't you just love that one? Wish I'd said that. We must be aware of our space and time as we read this parable one more time. So what if the parable isn't about being humble and not pushy and trying to get more or to be worth more? What if the parable is mostly about how generous God is? And maybe it's about how generous we can be, you and me. Generous with our neighbors who are struggling out of their homes due to the fire, or maybe their home is completely gone. Generous with people far away, experiencing flooding from hurricanes. Generous with our friends and neighbors whose jobs and livelihoods have been wiped off the map during the tragedies of 2020. Generous with church leaders who are trying to keep us all focused and serving God to our best ability while fielding pressure from all sides. Pressure to reopen churches, pressure to be safe by staying away from worship together. What are your pressures today? Can you be generous with yourself? Generous like the landowner in Matthew 20. Be generous at every turn. Maybe that means cutting each other a little slack. Maybe it means marching for justice for our brothers and sisters. I read an article just today about a billionaire who spent his adult life giving away his money in foundations, in grants, in gifts. He's in his mid-80s now, and the article I read, says he's announced today that he's done it. He has enough to live out his life modestly, but has given all the rest of that money away. What a good feeling that must be. Grasp the generosity, my friends. Amen.